Hi everyone. Thanks for having me, Africa Arena, here for your first time in Côte d'Ivoire. I think I'm right on time. As you know, yeah, startups, we are very busy. I don't know if I have the, yes. So maybe first a question for the room. Who amongst you has ever had a trouble sending money abroad? Raise your hand. Okay, so if I was doing my startup pitch, I would start with this issue and saying, yeah, this is the big issue. Cross-border payments, sending money, paying, transferring money is a big issue. But let's first look at the market. I don't know if you can see well. When you look at the cross-border payments market, this is a bit old, this is a McKinsey study, but this is very complex, right? Because we say payment, we say transfer, but it means a lot of things. So if you divide it by this matrix, you have consumer, businesses. So when you say payment or transfer, you can have consumers sending to consumer. You can have consumers sending to businesses because they want to buy something. You can have a business sending to a consumer because, for example, they're paying a wage or they're transferring money. And you can have a business paying another business. So this is kind of like how we can divide the market. But then when you look at what's the market size, this is not only Africa, and this is worldwide market size, but it's a bit old because I think it's 2017. But let's say this is like order of magnitude. So when you look at the market size, consumer to consumer, is less than, let's say, 30 billion market. But when you look at, so this is revenue. This is not transfer volume. This is revenue for how much revenue you make. So when you look at the revenue, it comes on 3 types of revenue. You have fees, you have FX, so revenue on currency exchange and float, and you have trade finance, like letter of credit. But the biggest of all the markets is business sending money to businesses. And this is, by one of magnitude, more than 130 billion market size when you look at it globally. But then when you look at the profitability or revenue margin, actually it's consumer to consumer. Can you see well? Because for me, I don't see. Yeah, okay. So for consumer to consumer, it's 6% average margin, but businesses to businesses, it's only 0.1% average margin. Okay? So what do we do amongst all of that? So when you want to look at, okay, cross-border payments, what type of payments? It's actually very, very, very complex, right? So you have from, let's say, the oldest technologies to the newest or brand new technologies. From the oldest technologies, you have the wire transfer, so the banking system. Then you have the payment service providers, the old ones we'll see, and the new ones, digital ones. Then you have the cards ecosystem. Actually, you can put them together. And then you have the new digital wallets, like the mobile money wallets, but also what I've put under that is the what we call the digital ledgers, cryptocurrencies, and all these new technologies. So let's look at future. Well, start with the past, present, and future of the payment. So when you look at the wire transfer, I tried to simplify, and because we only have 15 minutes, I think. So how does this world work for the banking system? It's very old. They're working with maybe Swift as a technology. It's a messaging technology. So how does it work is that all the banks, they talk to each other basically, and when you want to send money from a bank in Ivory Coast to a bank in the US, there are actually several banks in between that talk to each other. It's very old, it's very slow, it costs a lot of hidden fees, right? And why it costs a lot is because the banks, usually they don't trust each other, right? So they have to put money in like trust accounts so that they can settle the transactions. So let's not deep dive too much into it, but when you look at it, when you send the money, usually, and this is also a bit old because it's the same report, but usually the money will be exchanged 1.6 times before it reaches the beneficiary you want to send to, okay? And this requires a lot of float for the banks because on average per day, and this is a bit old, imagine today it's a bit like maybe 3 times higher, but it's more than $1 trillion worth of money that has to stay in the account so that the banks can trust each other. And I say, if I send money to this other bank, I have a Nostro or Vostro account at this bank where the money is, and I can actually send the money. Okay? But this is like the oldest business in the world. So in terms of how it's being disrupted today, well, you must know like the big players, Wise, Revolut, that are the challenging these systems. Actually, Wise and Revolut, they are doing the same business, but they're doing it with new technologies so that they can actually move the money faster. And sorry. Oh, all my images have disappeared. So in Africa, one interesting player, which you can't see on the screen obviously, is Verto FX, for example. So they're doing this kind of business where they're actually leveraging the correspondent banking network and making it more efficient. But now I think I'm going to have some trouble. Someone has the screen. Or maybe you can take the PDF file. Has anyone used Verto here? What was your experience? Why did you use them to send money? From euro to... Okay. So basically, Verto, I think they are based in the UK, and they are also leveraging, these correspondent banking networks. So they're working with liquidity providers, but trying to make it faster and more transparent. I don't know where's the tech team. Oh yeah. Okay. So I'll try to remember by after the on the correspondent banking network, after you have the payment service provider. So payment service provider is started also as a network, but it's more like a proprietary network. So I'm gonna make a guess. So who do you think is the biggest over-the-counter or counter-to-counter payment service provider in the world today? Physical. Visa is more like a payment network, but the one you would use like here, it's actually, I think in most countries it's become like a common name, like I'll do you this type of transfer. Who? Yes, Western Union. So let me try. I'm trying to, yeah, Verto FX, like you can see here. And so on the payment service provider, Western Union, obviously. But you also have others like MoneyGram, like Wafa Cash. And in some markets in Africa today, it's actually the main way to send money abroad. Like if you go to Morocco, you would use these systems like Wafa Cash, etc. I think it was taken in Morocco. So the thing is, because for Africa, it's very important, the remittance market. And I included it in the cross-border payment challenges because you don't know most of the time if it's a consumer or a business payment, right? A lot of people would use Western Union to make business payments because you've got this informality. So when you take the data that 60% of Africans on average exchange money internationally once a month, which is the highest rates in the world. So when you look at back then, Western Union is the number one. That's 2018, right? So we'll see the evolution. But you've got competitors, direct competitors with physical networks like MoneyGram, RIA, etc. And then talking back to the guys like Revolut, Wise, Remitly. So the ones that are like digital competitors. So they're mostly working on digital transactions, online acquiring. So when you look at the trends on online digital remittance payments, you would see that actually Western Union had a bit of a head start, but is actually very challenged and is not the number one. So if you go to the UK, for example, you would see ads, or even in France, etc., for Remitly, right? So I wanted to include them because the ecosystem of money transfer operators has been at the start of a lot of changes that you see today in the wallets and the consumer market. So for example, here in Côte d'Ivoire, we have Wave, We have Orange Money. But Wave was spun out from SendWave. This is their new branding, actually, but before it actually was the same company. And this was enabled because they had this international money transfer service, and then they realized that they needed the wallet. So one of the ways of today to actually make cross-border payment, and one of the biggest opportunities lies in the mobile money ecosystem. It's still very nascent. You don't have a lot of cross-border B2B mobile money payments, but a lot of companies are going into this network, especially, or this business segment, especially on Africa, formerly MFS Africa. They are tackling these new payment trends. So now, about the biggest of all, as you said, actually the biggest markets for cross-border payments, it's actually the cards network. So just to show you, these are like very recent data, 2023 data. So Western Union, you see, is let's say 100 billion worth of TPV. They don't disclose it, but Visa and MasterCard, they disclose it, and it's more than 12 trillion for Visa. So you see the order of magnitude, and you see why they're actually the two most valuable financial company in the world, okay? But how does it work? It's very, very complex. We don't have the time to explain everything, but it's a network of partners, processing companies, issuing companies, and banks, and they are working together to exchange, authorize the transaction, look at the fraud data, etc. And that's why actually you have a lot of merchants complaining that it's very expensive, but they will explain why it's very expensive, because you have a lot of people that are actually in the value chain, and they get paid in the value chain. And I wanted to highlight two other, one which is very well known, one which is the challenger, champion for Ivory Coast. You've got Jamo, of course, and you've got Push, if you don't know. They are providing the same technology. So Jamo can be used to make cross-border payment, and actually you would see a lot of companies, especially freelance, etc., using the Jamo card to actually buy stuff abroad. Okay, so this is one way to tackle the cross-border payment issue, because when you issue a card, a Visa card, a MasterCard, you have access to the international payment network immediately. And this is something that is very valuable, because you don't need to do and build your own network just like Western Union did. And then on the last part, let's talk about the new and a bit rogue players on the market, which are the cryptocurrencies and digital transactions, digital ledgers. So when you look back in 2018, for example, Bitcoin, or 2015, Bitcoin was less than $50 million worth of transaction every day. And now cumulative, depending on which price you take for Bitcoin, but it's, let's say, between 40 trillion to 100 trillion worth of transaction on the Bitcoin network, okay? So what you can see is, because when you look back at this data and this chart, when you take Bitcoin, USDC, or any digital ledger transaction, well, you get rid of all of these intermediaries. So normally, then you reduce the transaction cost. So you can actually now, in the McKinsey report, they say that you can actually have transactions that will have a transaction cost of less than $1 for an international transactions. Whereas 3-4 years ago, it was still $40 on average for an international transaction, base fee, without the FX, etc. So I think it's interesting, because today there's a lack of regulation. It's very uncertain if you can do it, don't do it. Okay, but there are some companies tackling that in Africa, especially. I'm putting examples of our region, because then you can have maybe hundreds of companies. But in our region, on the most active ones, you have Asa Finance Yellow Card, which are a bit older. And you also have Ejara, which is also incorporated in Ivory Coast. You may have heard of them. And they're also doing these transactions on the blockchain using USDC, etc. Okay, so now maybe as a final closure words, go back to the consumer to consumer, business to business, business to consumer, etc. And I think, since there are a lot of entrepreneurs and some coffee entrepreneurs in the room, but when you look at, okay, how do you want to tackle this issue? I think it's, as you've seen, it's very broad issue. So you can't tackle everything all at once. But what you can see is that there are some verticals that you can look at and say, okay, well, it may be interesting to launch a product in this particular vertical. So here you have some examples. You can download the report because it's a very interesting report, but you have examples of where, okay, for example, here, business to consumer is one of the highest growing segment, okay? And for e-commerce and all these type of transactions, this is where you see the most of growth, and this is where you have the highest potential to tackle this segment of the market. And then, of course, you would want to expand and to say, well, if I do a marketplace disbursement, for example, one big issue here, which is not being addressed for now, is all of the landowner or building owners, flat owners, house owners that use Airbnb have a lot of trouble getting paid from the people that book on Airbnb. It may be something that you have experienced, because if you don't have a Euro account, it's very difficult. So this is one vertical that you can tackle and say, okay, I'm going to address only the disbursement, Airbnb disbursements, and then you can address some other market segments. So I encourage you to look at the report and find some business ideas and, you know, launch a company in Ivory Coast, basically. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Africa Arena.
Thank you very, very much. I'm sure we've got a few questions, right? We can take 2 questions if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Anybody has any questions? The youngsters, Tidiane Koulibaly. Are you sure?
So thank you for the presentation. So my question is, where does Julia fit in all of this?
Good question. So as of today, what we're doing is we're enabling local transactions, and it's already a lot of work to do. So we're not venturing into the cross-border, except for the YMO region, so the UMOA. But we have partnered with some companies that do. And for some businesses, for example, we can top up the Jamo cards. We can also top up the wallets. So this is what we do. But we don't do it directly.
I have a question. Where do you see Julia in the next year, actually?
So also very good question. So you have, okay, all the business opportunities, but it is something that I haven't highlighted enough. It's the importance of regulation for fintech. And it also relates to your question. So why are we not doing cross-border payment directly? It's because to handle FX in this region, there's only one type of license that you can have, is the banking license. So if you don't have a banking license, you can't you can handle euros, dollars, or any other currencies than XOF. So when you look at the opportunities, you also have to look at the, what's the regulation allowing you to do or not to do. And for the next year, there is one very important thing that has happened this year, is the new payment service provider license, établissement de paiement. So it was released earlier, like at the end of January this year, and every fintech has to comply. So all the fintech that you've seen, especially, I haven't mentioned them, but on the acquiring side, online payment side, you've got Hub2, you've got CNetPay, you've got Paydunia, you've got InTouch. All of us are working hard, and that's why we're trying to optimize the time because we have to apply for this license, and this is a brand new license.
And is Côte d'Ivoire the biggest market for that?
So
far?
On the YMO region, yes. Okay. But you look at the size of the economy, Côte d'Ivoire is 30–40% of the economy of the 8 countries, so yes, of course.
All right. Yes, sir. Boston.
Thank you. Many questions. One is, what was the total amount in Bitcoin transactions on your slide?
So actually, there's no real amount because it depends on what price you take for Bitcoin. Right. And since the price is varying a lot, so you can have the total value of, or the total volume of Bitcoin that was transacted.
Right.
But in the amount, you can take any amount. So on this slide, They have different way to compute it, but let's say it's anywhere between 40 trillion to 100 trillion cumulative.
40 trillion to 100 trillion. How
Yeah.
much on Visa did you say again?
Visa per year,
Yeah.
it's 12 trillion. Okay. So when you look at it, you'll have to see, but now maybe if you take all of digital ledgers currencies, USDT, Bitcoin, all of them, it surpasses the Visa and MasterCard network by far.
And then you also said that the tight regulations around handling Forex is one reason you're not doing cross-border remittances. So how do we square, is these basically gray market, uncertain if they're legal, these crypto transactions?
Yeah.
And that's why, responsible companies that are looking for investors are staying away from using crypto to settle these.
Yeah.
That reconciles what we're hearing from you?
Exactly.
That there's a lot going on in this space, but it's not fully clear if it's legal, and that's why people are staying away.
Yeah. And actually, when you look at it, they're just building a more efficient correspondent network because they're still messaging. Crypto transaction is still information. But instead of having, 3, 4, 5 banks that hold the money funds with the digital ledgers, you don't have to hold the funds because they are sent instantly or within 5 minutes, depending on the nodes.
So here's an insane idea. Is anybody lobbying their country to make it clear that, yes, this is fine, and then your company would be
I think
settling
when you listen to Chris Morris, for example, the founder of Yellow Card, they're investing a lot heavy on lobbying to make the governments understand that actually it's a very great solution to lower the cost of cross-border payments to use digital transactions, cryptocurrencies, stable coins, and these types of currencies.
Okay. But you're staying away from lobbying. You're not exploring that area.
Yeah, if I had more money, I would do more lobbying. But and you see, the government just left.
Exactly. we know the president is watching, so maybe this counts as your lobbying. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Adam. From Boston to Abidjan, we love it. Great interest. One more question. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your nice keynote. Basically, I was just announced that they are piloting the instant wire transfer solution within the country. So what's your comment about that? How do you think this is going to improve the way money is transferred cross-border?
Also a very good question. So there is the interoperability project, as they call it. It's brand new also. I think they released the pricing last Friday. So we're just less than a week from then. What I can say is, first, the emerging markets are more advanced than the developed markets on these aspects. So if you go to the US, you go to Money 2020 Las Vegas, they will be talking about Fed now, which is not even fully in place. Okay, so in US, it's not live that you have instant transfer. Maybe the UK is one advanced market, you have instant wire transfer, but it's brand new for them, and here it's going to be put in place much faster than it took them to put in place. So when you look at the emerging markets, look at India and Brazil, I think, which are the most striking example of what is going to happen when you have a digital public infrastructure with interoperability. So when you look at India, UPI was introduced in 2016 after 8 years of work from the central bank, and it took around 2 years to take off, but now everything happens on UPI. It has changed the landscape of fintech there. Some big players have fallen down, like Paytm. Today they are in big trouble. And some smaller players that were the first one to integrate, like PhonePe, today they are like to the roof. So what will happen is, when you look at the pricing the central bank made, you've got some people, I saw someone from Wave, but you've got some business model that are very at threat with this new pricing and that they don't like, because when you look at it, the consumer to consumer is free on the mobile app. You can have a look at the pricing. So this will change a lot. It's going to take a few months, maybe a few years to be fully ramped up, but this will skyrocket the digital payments use cases. And when you look at the functionalities, there are very few features that they've released today, but two of them are really interesting, because one of them is that you can actually have a merchant do a cash in or a cash out instead of an agent. So you have the ability to do that. And the other is you also have the ability to do buy now pay later by design. So you can actually set up small installments to actually debit payment and authorization on several times.
Thank you, sir. One last question. One odd question. Julia, where does it come from, the name? I was saying earlier before you got here that, July is one powerful tribe that's a lot into marketing and businesses. Is that where that Julia name comes from?
Yeah, exactly. So it's not a hard question. So Julia comes from the Bambara language in Mali. So it means trades, and obviously the Jula tribe or community is related to this name and origin of the name.
Jula Pisansi, I love it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's give it up.
Iniche.
All right. I'm hearing that we are ready for the FinTech Africa panel about the era of consolidation that has begun. We should be having Babimo, Meta Bank, Paystack, and MS Studio, right? We've got 3 panelists ready? More than 3, actually. 4. All of them are ready. So let's welcome Elmedi Mesek, Michel Alade, Felix Darko, and Leslie Osote. We are getting the panel ready for the 4